Leah. Again, today's class is sponsored leilui nishmat Hershel Matis ben Moshe Meir for a aliyah for his neshama. He should only have nachat, simcha, bracha from his children, the great things that they're doing, and he should be comforted among the souls of Israel. Okay, so Parshat Ki Tetze is a loaded parsha. It has 74. There are 74 different commandments that are brought down in the parsha itself. If you take Parshat Re'eh Shoftim Ki Tetze, you have about 200 of the mitzvot that are found in the Torah itself. That's a third of almost about a little bit less than a third of the 613 commandments that are found in the Torah itself. Now the parsha begins, Ki Tetze le'milchama al oivyecha. When you go out into battle against your enemies, no Hashem Elokecha biyadcha, and when God will give your enemies and deliver them into your hands, v'shivita shivyo, and you will take their captives. Now, okay, so first of all, what is going on over here? This idea of going into battle is a continuation from last week's Torah reading. Last week we spoke about there are certain conditions that are necessary in order to meet your obligation to go out to war. And one of those things were that if you had just gotten married, then you were in your Shana Rishonah, you could not go out into battle. And then if you were someone who just planted a vineyard, you couldn't go out to battle. You're someone who just went ahead and built a house within that first year, you can't go out to battle. If you're someone who was afraid to go into battle, you didn't go out to battle. So who is this person that we're referring to? If you were afraid, you didn't go out to battle. Because you were afraid of sin, you didn't go out to battle. So we're talking about an individual here who was very deeply religious, someone who was very meticulous about his actions. Now, this guy, imagine for a moment the most religious person you could think of. He is going into battle, and he's fighting his enemy, okay? And he's fighting his enemy, and he sees in this whole battle a beautiful woman. He sees a beautiful, beautiful lady, and he wants to marry her. So Parshat tells us, "Ve'ita b'shivya," you in your place looking to find this captive, you find an eshet yafat to'ar, a beautiful woman of appearance, this gorgeous model of a lady, and v'chashakta ba, and you desire her, v'lakachta lecha leisha, and you want to marry her. What do you do in that process? Va'aveta el tov beitecha, you got to bring her into your home. V'gilcha et rosha, you got to go ahead and shave off her head. Okay, she's got to be bald. The Shneiru Connor look is back, I guess. That's where it comes from. She's got to cut her nails. She's got to wear a sackcloth. Okay, she's got to cry about the loss of her mother and father. She's got to be mourning. For 30 days. And afterwards, you want to go? You got to go ahead and you could marry her and she could become your wife. So what is going on over here? This is like one of those very difficult ideas in the parasha that is not so simple to understand. So a couple of things. We're talking about the most elite religious people in the Jewish community, and now we're worrying about them going out and finding some shiksa in the battlefield and being attracted to her to the point where he can't control his desire, and he's got to bring her home. Imagine that guy bringing home, this girl who's not Jewish to his parents. And their reaction to all this, and then they're shaving her head and like doing all these things. So there's lots of psychological innuendos over here. I'm not going to go into all that. You could use your imagination. But how does this guy, who's so observant, so faithful, so spiritual, descend to this place where he's now completely controlled by lust, where it says v'chashakta ba, okay, and you have this desire for her, okay, you're taken in by her. She's that beautiful. You spent your whole life controlling your urges, and now for the first time you go out and you see this woman, you can't control yourself. What is going on over here? So a couple of things. Number one is that when you are out in the battlefield and you're fighting and you're shedding blood, you're doing something that is very, very far from your nature. You're doing something that is very, very far from your reality. So what do? You are in a place where you're vulnerable. You no longer have the comfort of the home. You no longer have the protection of the family. And sometimes we are driven to make poor mistakes. And here, this is a warning that even someone who is surrounded themselves with spiritual refinements, someone who has gone out of their way to build up a spiritual sensitivity in the battlefield, my friends, in the arena of life, in the workplace, wherever we may go. That is a battlefield. Everyone around you is always trying to undermine you. Someone's trying to sell you something. Someone's pitching you on something. Someone wants something from you. And if you don't have clarity as to who you are, if you're not completely diligent, know that you can be someone who's just as guilty as this. This great tzaddik who's going to battle can lose himself in a world of, lust and pleasure. Okay, completely lose himself to the world outside. So the pasuk continues, and it tells us something about the Ben Sora Umore. Okay, so now what happens is he marries this woman. Okay, goes through the whole process and they get married. This is one of the ways you have forced conversion. He sees this girl, he wants her. In this process, he converts her and he marries her. So now the Torah is giving you something, not an accent. That the next pasukim talk to us about Ben Sora Umore. Listen to this. Okay, tells us like this. You have a man who's married to two women. It's true that the Torah permits polygamy, but just know that the Torah is constantly reminding us that polygamy doesn't work. You want to live and have a happy marriage, make sure you marry one girl and she's the right girl. Okay, you know what the punishment is for marrying two women? Anyone know? It's two mother-in-laws. That's right. The punishment for marrying two women is two mother-in-laws. One is enough. I happen to love my mother-in-law, but one is definitely enough. I can only share love with so many kinds of people. And the Torah is telling you that you're going to have a situation where you're going to have a kid from each of them. And the one you may want to go ahead and give your inheritance, your money, to the one that you love more and ignore the one that's hated. No, the Torah is telling you you have to go outside and above your emotions and do what is just. And then Torah tells us like this. You have this kid who's a Ben Sormor. He does not listen to the voice of his father, or the voice of his mother. He's not listening to them. They're going to take him out of the house. They're going to take him out of the house, bring him to the gates of the city, and they're going to go ahead and kill him. Right? They're going to stone him. Right? Now, first of all, what is going on here? We're talking about stoning children. Like this kid is not 13 yet, and you're going to go ahead and kill him? How do we understand this? Gemara right away has a massive conversation about this. There's one opinion that says like this, that there's no scenario in the world where we could actually kill this kid. That the only way you could kill this kid is if both parents had the same ideals, the same beliefs. You could kill this kid if both parents were the same height. Both parents the same height. When do you ever have two women, a man and a woman, sharing the same ideas? When do you have a scenario where you have a husband and wife who are at the same height? Where do you have a scenario where the husband and wife have no physical ailments? Okay, and it's fascinating here because you have this duality. Now, it's interesting to think about this for a minute, right? The Torah is saying that, and by the way, in addition, if this kid is not born into a community that does not have a Beit Din, you can't kill them either. So the criteria is the parents had the same values, same voice. That means the kid never heard the parents disagree, which is almost impossible. The parents are the same height, unlikely. Parents have a Beit Din locally, unlikely. Parents don't have any sickness or any kind of physical ailments, unlikely. Now, so there's this famous case, and I want you to Google this afterwards. I want you to Google the Jim twins, okay? These are two twins who were born in Ohio about 45 years ago. They were both set up for adoption, and they were both separated. Different mother, different father, different parents adopted them. And they were reunited 39 years later. And what's so fascinating about these two twins, I know this sounds like fake news, but you got to go Google it for yourself and read the articles because it's hard to understand. Each of these boys married a girl by the name of Betty, right? And they divorced that girl, and they both married another girl by the name of Leah, right? They never met each other, these boys, separate. They each had an addiction to cigarettes, and they both smoked the same brand of cigarettes. They both drove a Chevy, They both were, one was a policeman, the other one was a security guard, same profession. They both vacation on the same beach in Miami. Okay. Now, what are the odds of all that happening? So the odds are very, very slim to none. Two people having so much in common, having never met each other. What happened to nurture and nature? So there are no question about it that there are certain aspects of our nature that is genetic, and we have very little control over those things. But the circumstances, the environment that we're in can impact us. And I believe there's two things here. One is that the punishment for marrying a woman out of complete desire is having a child who's a ben Sora Mora, child who does not listen to the voice of the father or the mother. And some Chachamim say that that the reason why he's a ben Sora Mora because he never heard the voice. Lo shama kol avi b'kol imo. He never heard the voice of his parents. The parents were never around to go ahead and b'chanech him. They were never there to go ahead and give him the proper chinuch. But in addition to this, if you understand what the Pasukim and the Gemara is really saying, the Gemara is saying is that most people are a reflection of their nurture and their nature. But the child is only responsible for his nature, to some degree, right? But not his nurture. The nurture, that's the parents' problem. The parents raise the kid in an environment where, he was given what he or she needed. Now, the truth is that when we talk about, raising children, at some point, a child has their own free will, their own bechira. But ultimately, the perasha is telling you that the parents have to take some responsibility. And therefore, if the parents were not unified in their approach in raising this kid, that kid can never be killed because the parents are somewhat to blame. It's interesting, l'halacha, according to Jewish law, when a child hits their bat and bar mitzvah, 12 and 13, until that point, all the sins of that child goes on to whom? The parents. Why? Because the parents were the ones that have come and shaped that kid's life. But after their bat mitzvah, is it fair that a day after their birthday, now they go ahead and they have all of this, what's it called? They have all of this responsibility with their Yetzer Hara, and now we're going to go ahead and punish them? The answer is no. Gemara says that you only become fully responsible for your actions on your 20th birthday. Yep, that's right. You could party it out until you're 20. And then at that point, you're fully responsible. Why? God says that's on me. The first 12 to 13 years of your life, it's on your parents because they're the ones that create the environment. The rest of it, those next 7, 8 years, God gives you the ability of making the choices. How are you going to respond to the circumstances? That's God putting you in that environment. So he takes the brunt of that, your mistakes. But at some point, you got to be responsible for who you are. It's interesting that twins who were born in the same house are more likely to be less alike than twins who were separated at birth. Why? Because when twins are born in the same home, each of them are fighting for their own identities. And on a genetic level, they're able to make epigenetic changes because they want to be different. That means that if you were born to you have a twin, you will choose to want to be somewhat different than your twin, and that will cause a genetic response to change your wants, your needs. Your choices will end up determining your reality. So the Chachamim over here are telling you to be sensitive to the kid. The kid is born good. Don't allow bad kids to be judged. Their environment plays a very big role, and the parents should take responsibility for it. The father who went out and was driven by his passions and took a woman based on soul emotion is going to have a kid who's going to have emotional challenges. Perasha continues. Okay, Perasha continues. Perasha tells us, "V'lo tir'eh et shor achicha or seo nidachim etilamot mehem ve'eshav tishum achicha." You should not watch your brother's ox or sheep straying. That means, or turn a blind eye to it. You should return them to your brother. If you see the lost object of your friend, you got to return it. Okay, this is very simple. I get this. Ve'im lo karav achicha lecha, and if your brother is not near you, or v'lo yadatu, you don't know him, ve'safto al toch beitecha, should gather him into your house. He should be with you. Ador shachicha oto ve'shafto lo. You go ahead and you hold on to this his brother's stuff until you find the genuine owner and you return it to him. Okay. I get it. I get the idea, Rabbi, of returning a lost object. Makes sense. But this pasuk is talking about something else. Okay? This pasuk is telling you something else. Listen to the words again. I'm in the 22nd parak in Devarim, the first two pasukim. Okay? If you see the shore of your friend, okay, lost. Now, v'im lo karov achicha elecha v'lo yadato. You have a brother that's not close to you. Who are we talking about over here? We're talking about a Jew who's somewhat estranged from his own Yahadut, from his own Judaism. There are approximately 5.5 million Jews living in the United States of America, of which there's an assimilation rate of anywhere between 50 to 70%, depending if you add or take out the Orthodox community. Okay, that means in 30 years from now, the Jewish community in America is going to be half the size. We're going to move from 5.5 to about 2.6, 2.7 million Jewish Americans in the next 30 years. Horrible numbers. What is the pasuk saying? Pasuk is saying, "Ve'im lo karov achicha v'lo yadato." You meet a Jew who is removed from his Yahadut, from his faith, from his belief. You don't know the guy. What do? Ve'esafto otov beitecha. You bring him into your home. This, my friends, is the pasuk that teaches us about doing kiruv, of doing outreach. There are so many Jews that you and I both know. How do you handle them? You ignore them, which is what most Jews do. I can't tell you how many Jews I met in Brooklyn who were born in a Jewish community, who never heard a kiddush on Friday night, who never heard hamotzi, who never heard a lachadodi, who never heard a Shabbat, who never heard any of the nigunim on Friday night. How is that possible? How do we live in a community of such a rich, beautiful heritage and culture and not think twice or even once about the individual who's nearby, who's somewhat removed? The Torah is telling us that when you see a Jew who's somewhat estranged, you know what you got to do? You got to bring them into your home. I know you're thinking, Rabbi, I'm too afraid, my own kids. Nonsense. If you're the kind of person who is strong in your Yahadut, in your Judaism, then having a kid like that questioning you will lead you to answer. It'll teach your children not to be afraid of questioning. It'll teach your children not to be afraid of thinking out of the box. It'll teach your children to have the courage and the faith that everything that their parents taught them is emet, is real, is beautiful. So Pasukim continues. Okay, one last idea, and then we'll call it a Shabbat Shalom. And I think I'm going to tie it all in together at the end. Okay, the Parsha tells us, is a pasuk, another mitzvah over here. Lo tizra karmecha. No, not that one. Sorry. The lo tachrosh b'shor b'chomer yachtav. Okay, you can't go ahead and plow an ox and a donkey together. Okay, well, why not? So the Chachamim will tell us that, you know what, a donkey and a cow and an ox have very different kinds of strength. And therefore, one of the animals might be jealous of the other. I'm doing more work than you. What are you doing? They're going to fight. That's what we're worried about. We're worrying about a donkey and a cow fighting. But there's more than that. Their diets are very different. An ox will chew its cud, and a donkey doesn't chew its cud. It just swallows its food. So the donkey will constantly see this ox eating all day because he has 4 stomachs. He's got to vomit in his mouth, eat it again, swallow it, and then the whole process happens 4 times. So from the donkey's perspective, the cow is eating nonstop, and he may think that his owner gave more food to the donkey. What is this pasuk talking to us about? Do you know what it's talking to us about? It's about having sensitivities, being sensitive of tsar balachayim. That if you're going to go ahead and be the kind of person that's worrying about your donkey, worrying about an ox, worrying about an animal's thought behavior, thought patterns, how much more so should you be concerned about the people around you? We all know that Rav Kook was a vegetarian, but not a pure vegetarian, because he really believed that ultimately you should eat meat on Shabbat. So, but he told the students the reason why you should not be a vegetarian is simply because we're not finished the work we need to do between Ben Adam Lechavero. And if you start working solely on vegetarianism, you might create a reality where the animals become more important. I love reminding vegetarians that Hitler was a vegetarian and he treated his dogs with more care than he did with Jews themselves. Your whole mind becomes somewhat skewed. And therefore, Rav Kook says, no, you have a responsibility to sensitize yourself. Yeah, take care of the animals. Be tzar balachayim. But use that as a metaphor to worry about humanity first. What is the perasha talking about? These parashot and Sefer Dvarim are asking us to wake up our hearts. How are we rebooting our sensitivities? It's so easy to lose ourselves to a world of distraction, to a world of all sorts of lights blinging and buzzing and so on and so forth. But the mitzvot themselves are there to help you get yourselves to a place where you see the depth and the beauty of every single aspect of humanity, where you recognize the depth of every single human being, that every single person was created b'tselem Elokim. Every person has the spirit of God in them. What are you doing to wake yourselves up? You become someone who's lost to your passions. You end up having challenges with your children. You end up becoming someone who is lacking sensitivity. You may go ahead and see more value in animals than human beings. My friends, there are about 17 days left in the month of Elul, 17 shopping days left in the month. Every single day is a moment to be asking yourselves, what do you want the year to look like? What do you want next year to be like? You want to wake yourselves up. Now is the time to do it. May Hashem bless us with the clarity and understanding that it's up to us to choose to change our nature, to change our nurture, to become something bigger, to become something more. That we have the power of changing what the future looks like by just being mevakshe Hashem, asking Hashem's open up our hearts so that we could feel that deep connection to humanity, so we could feel that deep connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom Baruch. Thank you so much for listening. God willing, we will see you guys, Bezrat Hashem, on Monday night. If you want to join me for Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times, Mishleh. And if not, Tuesday for the ladies, we're doing Pasha Bereshit. On Wednesday, we're going to continue Action for the Soul. We're going to do Chachma and Bina. And then back again next Friday for Action for the Soul. Again, Shabbat Shalom Baruch. Thank you so much for listening. Kol Tuv.